We've got the first college football playoff rankings of the 2025 college football season. And I tell you what, these are different rankings, a different way to rank teams than I think we have ever gotten from the playoff committee. They've just never ranked teams like this. I will kind of give my takeaways here on why these rankings are different. I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and you guys that have been with me for quite some time, you know that I do these ranking projections every week once the playoff rankings get here, and I've been very accurate. I haven't checked my projections with everyone, but I have time to time just looked at my projections versus ESPN's or whoever else is doing projections, and I've been more accurate than the other people. So I've done a pretty good job because there's been a way that they have ranked these teams, and you can kind of figure it out. But that's out the window because they rank these teams totally different this year. My big takeaway, and I'm not really mad at these rankings because I can see at least what they did for the most part. Now, there are a couple of head scratchers, but if you look at the way that they rank these teams, two things really stood out to me. Resume does not matter near as much as it has in the past. It just doesn't. It's more about performance. You know, how badly are you beating teams? Like, if you look in the past, he was even in the criteria where they said they did not look at scoring margin, winning margin, and it's clear that they did with these rankings, which I think you should look at that a little bit. So I'm not mad at that. And then also how teams are playing now. These are almost like power rankings, and they're forgiving early season losses for a lot of these teams. It's more about how you're playing now, and I'll give you some examples of that as we go through. But yeah, let's just run through the rankings, and I'll give you my takeaways, what I liked, what I didn't like, and kind of give you my thoughts on what they were thinking, why they did what they did, and again, some examples where things just didn't make any sense. So the top 5. This is pretty much what everyone expected. I did think Indiana would be 1 and Ohio State would be 2 because I thought that resume would matter more, and it clearly doesn't, because if you compare the resumes, and I did this in the video this week, if you compare the resumes with Ohio State and Indiana, I mean, clearly Indiana has the better resume. You can look at a win over the committee's top 10 Oregon and a top 25 Iowa team. Then you look at Ohio State, their best win is Texas, who's behind Oregon, and they have a win over Washington, who is behind Iowa. And then if you keep going down the list, they both blew out Illinois. Ohio State has one over Minnesota. Indiana has one over Maryland. So you can go down the list, and the resumes are pretty close. Indiana definitely has the better resume. Indiana has been very impressive as well. They've been blowing teams out. So I even if you go by the performance, I think Indiana probably should get the nod at number 1. But if you're going by eye test and just who you think the better team is, I mean, I don't disagree. I think Ohio State is the best team. I think if they played Indiana on a neutral field this week, Buckeyes probably win a close game. But I do think it's close. And again, shouldn't the resume matter? So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what their real reasoning is. I think the guy that they interviewed said something about Ohio State's defense. I mean, Indiana's defense has been really good too. So there's really just not a good explanation for it to make it make sense. But anyways, Ohio State 1, Indiana 2. Doesn't matter. They're going to play each other in the Big Ten Championship as long as they continue to win, and it'll all sort itself out. Texas A&M, I thought clearly should be at 3. Their resume is, I know on the selection show they were talking about Texas A&M's metrics and all this, but resume to me, A&M is behind Ohio State and Indiana. And then, of course, Alabama and Georgia. Those were no surprises. We go to the next teams. And, you know, something interesting I noticed with these teams, I'm actually glad they put Oregon at 9. If you watch my video, I thought that Oregon should be number 9, but I thought that they would rank them higher just because I thought that's what they would do. So yeah, they look at the resume there and see that Oregon hasn't really done a whole lot. So again, you're going to see, like, sometimes you can tell they did go by resume and other times they didn't. And that's where the inconsistencies can kind of, they can kind of get annoying. But you also have to look at Oregon, the fact that they played Indiana, who's the top 2 team, played them close. So you're looking at performance, how you played against your competition. and I think Oregon at 9 is actually the right spot for them. So what was interesting here for me is I do not understand why BYU is behind Ole Miss but ahead of Texas Tech, because when I compare Ole Miss and Texas Tech, I mean, they're almost identical. It's very, very, very close when you look at the resumes. Now, Texas Tech did lose to Arizona State versus Ole Miss losing to Georgia, but Texas Tech, that's close. And Georgia's, well, I guess Arizona State's not ranked, so that's the difference really. But when you look at their wins, Ole Miss had a close win with Oklahoma. They blew out Tulane, and they had a close win against LSU. Texas Tech dominated against a 2-loss Utah, who's right there pretty much the same as Oklahoma. Texas Tech's win over Houston, very similar to Ole Miss's win over Tulane. They blew them out. And then you also add in a blowout win over Kansas. So I don't really see much difference in Texas Tech and Ole Miss besides perhaps the loss. And I'm trying to remember. I don't think Baron Morton played in that Texas Tech game against Arizona State. That game's slipping my mind. I can't remember what happened in that game. But to me, those teams are very, very similar. And so BYU should be either ahead of both of them or behind both of them. That one just doesn't make much sense to me. Like, what's the reasoning there? I don't know. And then, of course, Notre Dame at 10, I think this surprised a lot of people. Head-to-head obviously mattered in these rankings for a lot of teams, but it did not matter with Notre Dame and Miami, despite the fact that they have very similar resumes. It's not like we're talking about a 3-loss team and a 1-loss team. Resumes are very similar between these two teams. Miami has the win over Notre Dame. Notre Dame's best win is probably USC. Miami beat South Florida. Notre Dame beat Boise State. Those are pretty similar. I mean, the resumes are very, very similar. They both have 2 losses. Why did the head-to-head not matter here? Well, again, it's about performance. Notre Dame lost very close games to Miami and Texas A&M. Miami lost to Louisville and lost to SMU. Those are worse losses. Is there's like a huge gap in those losses? I don't think so. So again, I don't really understand, honestly. It really is how you're playing now. This committee is looking at how you're playing now. So these, like I said earlier, these are almost just power rankings. That's how they're ranking the teams, and that's never been the case. Teams that lost early in the year have always been penalized for those losses. It's always been about your complete. How many times do we hear that? It's about your complete body of work. What did you do throughout the entire season? Now, again, I don't dislike this because I think we do want the teams that are playing their best at the end of the season. Obviously, we don't want a team that starts 0-4 and then they win out and they're really, really hot. We don't want that team in the playoff if their resume is that bad. But I don't mind that. So I think Notre Dame is a better team than Miami. And if they played again, I think Notre Dame would win. But it's just different. It's just different the way they're ranking the teams this year. And I still haven't made up my mind on if I like it or not. But let's go to 11 through 15. Texas at 11, Oklahoma at 12, Utah 13. So Utah, big winners with these rankings. I thought they might put them up there, but I wasn't sure. And when you see Utah at number 13, that tells me that Utah has a real shot to make the playoff without even winning the Big 12 championship. They'll need a little bit of help, and they're obviously going to have to win out, but they are definitely in a good position. You feel like Texas and Oklahoma both have a chance to lose, and that's going to bump Utah up. And I think that you maybe would need one more team to lose because you're also going to have an ACC team and a Group of 5 team that would jump Utah. But Utah's in a great spot. Virginia and Louisville right there at 14 and 15. Again, head-to-head mattered here. Even though it did matter. I mean, a pretty big gap between Notre Dame and Miami. But like I said, it's about how you're playing now. That seems to be the story. So let's talk about Oklahoma for a second and talk about Vanderbilt. So we're going to move ahead to the next teams. But remember that number, Oklahoma at 12, Vanderbilt at 16. So 4 spots between those two teams. I just wanted to, this was just kind of a takeaway when I was looking at the different teams, the different rankings, the different resumes and all that. So if you look at Vanderbilt, lost to Alabama and Texas. You look at Oklahoma, lost to Texas at Ole Miss. So their losses are basically identical. I mean, there is just not much difference there at all. Then you go to their wins. Oklahoma has a win over Michigan. Vanderbilt has a win over Missouri. Very, very similar wins. Then you look at Oklahoma has a win over Tennessee. Vanderbilt has a win over LSU. very similar wins. Both teams have 3 losses. So those resumes are almost identical, and yet there are 4 spots between them. Makes no sense, except for the fact that Oklahoma beat Michigan in a more convincing. That was a more convincing win than Vanderbilt's win over Missouri. And so that's why I'm telling you, with these rankings, they are looking at how bad you got beat, or how bad did you beat your opponent, or if you did get beat, did you at least compete? Was it a close game? They are absolutely looking at that. And I think that's a perfect example of that. And again, you can see that throughout these rankings. Moving on, Georgia Tech at 17. That's kind of close to where I thought they would be. I don't really have a big issue with that, although resume-wise, Georgia Tech really does not have much. We've already talked about Miami. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But let's compare. Let's just look at Miami and Vanderbilt, because we have two lost teams here pretty close to each other. Miami has a win over Notre Dame. They have a win over South Florida. They have a win over Florida State. Those 3 wins collectively, I think, better than wins over Missouri and LSU that Vanderbilt has. But again, the losses, Miami has that loss to SMU, which I think SMU is probably close to being ranked. So I don't think there's a huge difference there. So again, we're nitpicking here, but it's just interesting. I think Miami, if we're looking at the whole body of work, I think Miami is ranked too low. Now, if we're looking at how they're playing now with these 2 losses recently, then okay, yeah, I think Miami is a good spot. And it seems pretty clear that they are looking at how you are playing right now. USC in a pretty good spot. Now, Iowa, very interesting. I don't know about Iowa at 20. And I think they're looking at the fact that they blew out Minnesota and they blew out Wisconsin. Those are not great teams, but they were convincing in their wins. I mean, they were very, very good in those 2 games. But if you look at, they played a very close game with Penn State, and that was I think Penn State's first game without Drew Aller. So that's not a great, impressive win. And they have the loss to Iowa State, who is nowhere near being ranked. That's a 4-loss team. So with your best win being to Minnesota, and you have a loss to a 4-loss team, that's why I did not think Iowa would be ranked. But I think they're also looking at that Indiana game and how they played them really, really tough. And like I said, they're looking at if you lost, was it a close game? That seems to be a very clear takeaway from these rankings. And so they're getting rewarded for playing a close game against a really good team, just like Notre Dame is getting rewarded for having close losses to Miami and Texas A&M. So that is a clear takeaway, and that is a clear difference from how they have ranked teams in the past. Now let's go to the final 5 teams: Michigan, Missouri, Washington, Pitt, and Tennessee. Michigan, Missouri, Washington, I think are in really good spots. I like that. Those rankings makes a lot of sense. Pittsburgh and Tennessee, especially Tennessee. But yeah, these 2 teams should not be ranked. This is, I just don't understand this one at all. It makes no sense to me, especially Tennessee. Now for Pittsburgh, you could use the whole, they're playing a lot better now. They changed quarterbacks. The West Virginia loss was very early in the year, although that's not a great team. They lost to West Virginia. But wins, like Pittsburgh's best wins are Florida State and NC State. They haven't beaten anyone. That Pittsburgh should not be ranked. I'm sorry. Tennessee definitely should not be ranked. I mean, this one really does not make sense to me. They have 3 losses. Yes, those 3 losses were to really good teams, top 15 teams. But their best win is Mississippi State, and that was an overtime game. I mean, that is it. They haven't beaten anyone else. But again, we got to go back to how did you lose those games? They played a very close game with Georgia, close games against Oklahoma. Alabama wasn't really a close game. That I know that pick 6 right before the half kind of blew that game wide open. It was close for a while. But I think, again, they're getting credit for playing Georgia and Oklahoma. So, like, close losses, you get rewarded for those with this committee. And I think that is clear. But even so, I mean, Tennessee, you've got to beat somebody. I think that some teams that really should have been ranked ahead of probably Pittsburgh and Tennessee. Cincinnati, I mean, they've got wins over Iowa State, UCF, Kansas, Baylor. I mean, those are 4 decent teams out of the Big 12. They lost to Utah. And then Nebraska was week 1, and this committee has shown that they're kind of forgiving teams for early season losses. I think what's hurting them, though, is they got blown out by Utah. And, again, winning margin definitely matters with these rankings. But you can keep going down the list. Houston has a win over Arizona and Arizona State. They've only got 2 losses. Why are they not ahead of Tennessee? Memphis has a better win than Tennessee has and a win over South Florida. And they only have 1 loss. They have 2 fewer losses. Memphis should be ahead of Tennessee. TCU should be ahead of Tennessee. They have wins over SMU and Baylor. Those are better than 1 win over Mississippi State. So I don't know why Tennessee is ranked, other than the fact that they played Georgia and Oklahoma close. And that's really all you have. But then you could go to James Madison. They played Louisville in a close game. They only have 1 loss. Why are they not ranked? And I thought that Memphis and James Madison would be ranked just because I thought they'd put Group of 5 teams in there. And I guess that question was answered for us. I didn't know the answer, but now I do. They keep ranking teams past 25 until they get to a Group of 5 team. So now we have that answer. But yeah, that one's just, again, it's a different ranking. I understand kind of how they're doing it now. But even with those changes, having a 3-loss Tennessee team ranked, and when you have 2-loss teams with better wins, that one just blows my mind. And I would love for someone out there that, if you got any idea why Tennessee was ranked, I mean, is it just like, is it SEC bias? Are they trying to get some of these SEC teams like Georgia and Alabama a top 25 win? I don't know, but that one really was a head scratcher. So moving forward with this, depending on what time the rankings come out, I will either do a video that night right after or the next morning like I'm doing now and put it out early in the morning. This one, I had to really take some time and try to figure out what this committee was doing before I did a video, because I didn't want to come in here with, just randomly talking. I wanted to have some points to make, and I think that I did. But I obviously want to hear from all of you. What did you think about these rankings? Did you like the new way that they're ranking teams? Again, I haven't made up my mind yet. We'll see how consistent they are with it moving forward. But I would love to know what you guys thought about it. And then, what did you like or dislike with the rankings? Who'd you agree with? Who did you disagree with? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below.